Mishnah, we're at the bottom of the Yamud, the last Mishnah, on Yud Beis, Amud Beis. Kol hatadim mechaverai, whoever comes more often than another, koydem es chaverai, will come before. This is referring to any case of a mitzvah, when you have one mitzvah that's more often than another, so you'll fulfill the one that's tadir first, and it applies regarding karbanis. When there's two karbanis that have to be brought in the mizbeach, the one that's more constant or more often, you bring it first. V'chol hamakudish mechaverai, and the one that's on a higher level of kedusha, holiness, than another, also kaidem es chaverai, he comes first. It's interesting. I saw one of the Mefarshim say that the concept that we usually know, Mailim B'Kodesh, that you start actually on the lower level and you go up, like for example, what you have by Ner Chanukah. Yeah. So that's in a case where it's the same mitzvah, and you're fulfilling the same mitzvah, then you do it in a way that you start low and you keep on going up. Here we're talking about two different karbanas or two different mitzvahs. Then I say that you start with the one that's higher level of kedusha. Par HaMashiach or Par HaEda, when you have the bull that has to be brought for the Kohen Mashiach that made a psak din, by mistake, and did his Aveda, so he brings this bull. Oh, Par HaEda, or there's a par that has to be brought for all the Klal Yisrael when the Bezdin made a mistake with their psak din. Oimdim, they're both standing there to be brought. Par HaMashiach Koidim, Le Par HaEda, B'chol Ma'isov. All the details of the carbon, the par that's brought for the Yidden, or for the Kohen, that is, for the Kohen Mashiach, comes before the par Eda, the par brought for the Yidden. Mm-hmm. This is really the reason why this Mishnah is here, because of the last din of the Mishnah. The din of Kol HaTadir is actually not the main thing here, that's brought also in the Gemara in Zvachim. Talk to Gemara, Minan Amili. What's the source? Okay.
A little something before
yeah.
you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Please help us.
Zakta Gemara Minan Amili. What is the source for the din of the Mishnah where it says that when you have the par of the Kohen and the par of the Eidah for the Yidden, that we first bring the par of the Kohen? Omar Abai says Omar Kro, because the pasuk says, let me repeat that again. The Minan Amili is the source for Tadir Kodim, that the one that's more often will be first. So the pasuk says Movad Eilas Abayke Asher Eilas Atamid. When it speaks about the carbon musif, so it says that carbon musif is brought, but besides what's brought before it, which is the carbon oila in the morning. Okay, now the pasuk uses a double lashon. It says oilas habayker, and then it says asher oilas hatamid. So the question is, Machdi, let's see, ksiv oilas habayker uses the term oilas habayker, oilas hatamid lamali. Why does it say again oilas hatamid? So halchi kamar achmana is here where the Torah is telling you called the tidira kadma. Whatever is more often will be first. So it's not only specifically regarding the Talmud and the Musaf in the Seder of bringing the Karbanis, that the Talmud is before the Musaf, but it's a general rule. The Talmud, which is more consistent every day, so from here we learn for every other place that whatever is taught is first. Now, the one that's on a higher level of Kedusha comes first. From where do we see this? The Tanat Rab Shimon, because Rab Shimon taught, it says in the pasuk Vikidashta, you should sanctify it. This is regarding the Kayin, and that's the whole Davar Shebekdusha. When it comes to any matter of holiness, Liftayach Rishain, he begins first. That's that he gets the first Aliyah in the Torah, and Olavarach Rishain when it comes to benching Mezumin. So he is the one that's honored to bench. V'litl Mana Yaf Rishain, if you're giving out anything and you're dividing portions, he takes the portion first. So just like we see regarding the Kayin that has a higher level of Kedusha, what does that express itself in? That he's first. So too regarding any carbon or any mitzvah, whatever is on a higher level of Kedusha comes first. Okay, now the Gemara will address the point of the Par Kayin. Par Kayin Mashuach Par Eda Chulu. You have these two bowls. One is for the Kayin Mashiach and the other is for the people that sinned. So the Par Kayin Mashiach is the one that comes first. Why is this? What's the source for this? The Tanna Rabbanan we learned in the Braisa V'Sara Faisai that you burn it like, and this is a pasuk speaking about the par ha'eda, when all the Yidden are bringing, and it says burn it kashasaraf as a par arishan. The same way, the same halacha, like you burnt the par that was mentioned before, which is the par of the Kohen Mashiach that's mentioned earlier in the parsha. So now, why does it say this pasuk harishain? So actually, from Rashi, it seems that we're not only asking on the word harishain, but this entire pasuk is extra, because in the previous pasuk, it already clearly says that whatever you did to the par by the Kohen Mashiach, you do not for the par Eidah. So why is it saying this again? The answer is, it's telling you, it's not only simply saying that the way you bring the carbon is with the same details as the par Kohen Mashiach, but it's also telling you the order. That if you have both in front of you, you bring the par of the Kohen Gadol, of the Kohen Mashiach first. Tana Rabbanon, another brayso we learned that gives a different source, a different reason for this. Par Kohen Mashiach, upara Eda. When you have the Par Kohen Mashiach and the Par Eda, Oimdim, they're standing in front of you. Par Kohen Mashiach Kaidim, the Par Kohen Mashiach comes first. The Par Eda to the par of all the Yidden. B'chol Ma'asav, and all the actions, all the details that you do. And here the reason is, Hoyel Mashiach Mechaper. The Kohen Gadol, he's the one that brings Karbanis, and he brings the Kapara for the Yidden by being makriv of the Karbanis on their behalf. The Edom is Kaperes. But the Yidden, the people, they are the recipients of this kapara from the Kohen Gadol. So din hu sheyaktem hamachaper lemiskaper. It makes sense that the one that's bringing the kapara should come first before the ones that are receiving their kapara from him.
Even though by this carbon.
Yeah, it's not saying this carbon necessarily, but b'chlal, chayra, that's what it means there. This is also what we see. It says v'chiper ba'adai. By the carbon name Kippur, we say that first there's an atonement for him, for the Kohen Gadol, ubad beisai, and then for his family, and then ubad kol kal Yisrael. Then only afterwards for all the Yidden.
So he takes precedence.
Correct. Now this brayso goes on to say other details of what the order is. If you have two karbanas standing in front of you, what comes first? So the par helam davashal tzibur. When you bring this par, when the tzibur did an aveda b'shoigig following the bezdin, koydem lepar shel avedas kechavim. That comes before the par that's brought in a case where the mistake was in a case of aveda zara. Now, my time, what's the reason for this? Because hay chatos v'hay oila. When it's a par that's brought for any aveda, over there you're bringing a chatos. But by the case of avedas kechavim, you first have to bring a carbon oila, and the chatos comes before the oila. And the chiddush here is not only in the case where you're bringing a chatas and an oila for the same aveda, the chatas is before the oila, but even when it's a chatas for one aveda and an oila for a different aveda, the chatas comes first. The Tanya, we learned in the brayso, it learns it from the pasuk. It says v'hikriv es asher lachatas rishayna. Bring the chatas first. This is in the parsha of oila v'yedid, where you're bringing their chatas. It says the chatas is first. Ma tamud leima, what is it coming to say? If it's coming to say that the chatas is first before the oila, hare karnema, it says there v'sasheni yas oila kamishpa. The second will be the oila. So why does it say here the term rishayna? Because it's teaching me elazeh bona av. This is a source. She kol chatois kaidmis la'oilas abayim mimayim. You always bring the chatas before the oila. Not only in a case where it's the chatas and oila for the same aveda, but even for another. And as Mefarshim point out, chiddush in our Gemara is when it's a chatas and oila for the same aveda. So the reason the chatas comes first is because the chatas is the basic atonement, and then the oila is like a gift that you give after the kaparas. The Alter Rebbe brings us also in Yigeres Hatshuva and Tanya. Here, though, the chiddush is it's a chatas of one aveda, oila for a different aveda, but the chatas still comes first. Now the kaimelon. Furthermore, we paskin regarding this. Even if the chatas is only of a bird, and the oila is a behema, the chatas is first. The brayso goes on to say, "Par avedas kechavim." If you have in front of you the bowl for avodah zarah, kaidim l'soyer avedas kechavim. That's before a soyer that's being brought for avodah zarah, which is the soyer is brought by someone that served avodah zarah. Yeah, you bring a soyer. So, but the par for avodah zarah, which is by the yidden, by the kol that served avodah zarah, that comes first. Amai, why is that the case? Because hay chatos and v'hay oila. The par is a chatos, and the soyer is an oila. So the chatos comes first. Okay, maybe it's the par and the soyer for the same avodah zarah, possibly for not for different, for the same avodah zarah. The par comes first because the par is the chatos and the soyer is the oila. Okay. Amri b'marava in West in the Eretz Yisrael they said Mishmei de Rava in the name of Rava Bar Mari chatos avedas kechavim. One second. Let me backtrack a second. So the Gemara here is asking a question actually. Okay, now the Gemara is asking, how could you say that the par of avedas kechavim comes before the soil of avedas kechavim? Amai, why is that the case? Hay chatos v'hay oila. The par is actually a oila, and the soil is the one that's the chatos. If so, you're bringing the oila before the chatos. So it's the opposite order that we just said that it always has to be. Okay. So Amri b'marave in the West they explained Mishmei de Rava Bar Mari chatos avedas kechavim chaseira aleph. In this case, when it says you bring the chatos By the Avodah Zarah, the word chatas is written missing an aleph. It says l'chatas ksiv. So because it's missing an aleph, that's an indication that it comes second, that it's different than a regular chatas. Okay, so in other words, over here, usually the oila is coming as a gift after the chatas. In this case, it's not so. Over here, the oila has to come before. Rava said, kamishpat ksiv. The pasuk says that it should be like kamishpat ksiv bei. What does that mean? Sorry, that's already a new thing. Kamishpat ksiv bei means like the order in the pasuk. When you look in the pasuk, the par is mentioned first, and the soir is mentioned second. So even though the par is the oila, but you go by the order that it says in the pasuk. And therefore the par being the oila comes first. Okay, the next thing it says in the Braisa, nasi. The goat of Avodah Zarah comes before the goat that's brought by the nasi. So that's the sar that an individual is bringing, or the sar that the nasi is bringing. The nasi, so the sar of Avodah Kechavim comes before the nasi. My time, what's the reason? So the sar of the Avodah Kechavim, that's brought by the tzibur. When the tzibur sins, it comes before the sar of the nasi. My timer, hi tzibur vayachid, because the sar of Avodah Zarah is of the public, and this is an individual, even though he's the king. Sar nasi kaidem the siras yachid. The side of the nasi comes before the seira of the yachid. Okay, so the side of the nasi is a zachar, and the seiras yachid is an akeva. My time, why is the nasi first? Because hi melech v'hai hedyet. He's a king, and everyone else is just a plain individual. Seiras yachid kaidemes lekispas yachid. For any carbon chatas, you always have a choice. You can either bring a she goat or a she lamb. So you bring the side first, the seira first. That's what it says in this brayse. Now the Gemara says, but for Tanya in a different brayse we learned kivsas yachid kedemes l'siras yachid, that the kivsa actually is the opposite. The kivsa comes before the seira. Amar Abaye, so Abaye answers Tanoi, it's a machlokes, and the Gemara explains the machlokes. Mar sava seira difa. One opinion is that the soy or the seira, the she goat is first. Shekein is rabsa eitzel avodas kechavim. Because we see that by a yachid, the only carbon that he can bring for a chatas by a yachid is just a seira. Here he doesn't have a choice of a seira and a kizba. So it stands out that it's first. Omar Savar, but another opinion is kivsa adifa, that the kivsa comes first. When you bring the kivsa, since it also has a tail, so there's more to the carbon, so you bring it first. Oimer koidim lakeves haba imay. When you bring the carbon Oimer, the second day of Pesach, and along with it you bring also a lamb, the Oimer is brought first, the carbon mincha, the Oimer is brought first, before the keves that's brought for it. Shtei alechem, the two breads on Shavuos, kaidnu lekvasim abam imam, they are before the two kvasim that are brought with them. That's the shtei alechem are not really brought in the mizbeach at all, it's just a tnufa. Apparently that's what the Gemara means, that when you raise it up, that's done before the kvasim. The rule here is davar abba begin liyoim, but you're bringing for the day, which is either the oimer or the shtei alechem. It's brought for the day. That's kaidem. That's first. Davar abba begin lechem, and then afterwards comes the carbon that comes for the bread, and that's the kvasim that come for the bread. Continues the Mishnah. Zakteilik Mishnah ish kaidem leisha. A man comes before a woman lahachyos, when it's a question of who you're going to save, when both of them in their lives are in danger. So you save the man before you save the woman, since he can fulfill mitzvahs. So therefore he comes first. Or lahashav aveda, when it comes to returning a lost object, also you give back to the man before the woman. But isha kedemes, there's a big argument in the Rishonim and Paiskim regarding many different details of exactly a man and a woman, who you tend to first. The Mishnah here only mentions two things. There's a lot of other details also that's discussed. Okay, here the Mishnah mentions also another few details regarding the woman, where a woman comes first. Va'isha kedemes leish liksus. A woman comes before the man when it comes to making sure she has clothing. For her, it's more embarrassing if she doesn't wear proper clothing. And also to free from prison as well, the woman comes first because they can violate her. So she has to be freed first. But however, if it's a case that you're afraid that both the man and the woman can be violated, for the man it's actually more painful and therefore he has to be released first. Tana Rabbana, we learned in Braisa, if a person himself, his father and his teacher are all captured, so he has the opportunity to free one person, so he comes first. Because like it always says, your life is first. But then the teacher comes even before a father, as the Gemara famously says that the teacher brings a person to Chai Olam Haba, into the life of Torah and world to come, and the father is physical life. Imai kaidemes lakulam. But if it's the mother that's in prison, the mother comes before everyone, as is like the reason we mentioned in the Mishnah, because a woman could be violated. Chacham kaidem lamelech. The Chacham, a wise man teaching Torah, he comes before a king that's imprisoned. And the reason is because the Chacham, one will soon explain, the Chacham cannot be replaced.
The king also can read.
No, the king could be.
In a very remote...
Again, Chacham, let's read this again. Chacham kaidem lemelech Yisrael, that is, goes together. The Chacham comes before the Melech Yisrael. Chacham shemeis, here the Mishnah says right here, or the Braisa that is. The Chacham that passed away, Elana kayetze bay. So if it's a great Chacham that's teaching Torah, he's irreplaceable. However, Melech Yisrael shemeis, a Melech of Yidden that died, Kol Yisrael ru'uyim l'malchus. Theoretically, any Yid could take his place and be appointed as a king. Melech kaidem l'kayin gadol. A king comes before the kayin gadol. Shenema, the pasuk says, "Vayemer HaMelech lahem." The king said to them, this is David HaMelech speaking, "Chu imachem avdei adonechem v'goyim." Take from the servants of your master. So he's speaking to the kayin gadol, and he's referring to himself as the master. So he's a master even over the kayin gadol. Kayin gadol kaidem l'navi. The kayin gadol is higher and it comes before the prophet. Shenema mashach oisei sham. He anointed them there. Tzadik HaKayin, who anointed them? Tzadik HaKayin, so it says first the Kayin Gadol, and then it says V'nasan HaNavi. So Hiktim Tzadik L'nasan. He mentions the Kayin Gadol before the Navi, Nasan HaNavi. If I am at another source, Shmana Yeshua, listen Yeshua HaKayin HaGadol, Ata V'reyacha, you and your friends, listen. The Gaimer. So who has the friends here? So Yachal Ad Yaite, so you think his friends were just plain individuals. Hamad Lai Mekan Shei Meifes Hema. They were people of wonders. Ve'e Meifes Al Navi. This expression of Meifes means that his friends were prophets. That the prophet is the one that brings a sign or a miracle. And it says here that Yeshua, Kayin Gadol, was before his friends, which were a Navi. Meshuach b'shem HaMeshcha, one that's anointed with the oil to be a Kayin Gadol, Kaidem l'merubah begadim. He comes before the one that only has the extra garments. Merubah begadim Kaidem l'Mashiach she'ava machmas karyai. The one that has the extra garments, and he's a Kayin Gadol, comes before the one that was anointed, but not temporarily. He was removed from his kohuna because of a Balkari. Mashiach she'ava machmas karyai. If it's a Kayin Mashiach that was removed because of being a Balkari, Kaidem la'ava. He comes before the one that was removed more permanently for a reason of tumah or something else, not just being a Balkari. Or read it together. La'ava machmas mumai, that is, when he was removed because of a blemish. So that's basically permanently removed. Now, Ava machmas mumai, the one that was removed because of the blemish, Kaidem l'mashuach mulchama. He still comes before the one that's anointed to lead Yidden in war. Mashuach Melchama, the one that's anointed to lead Yidden in war, Kaidem Lizgan. He comes before the deputy Kayin Gadol, the one that is there in case the Kayin Gadol can't serve in Yom Kippur. Sagan, Kaidem LaMarkel, this Gan comes before the manager of everything in the base of Mikdash, which is called an Amarkel, as the Gemara explains here. Maya Markel, Amar of Chizda, Amar Kula, Amar Kula. Amarkel is these two words. Amar Kula. Everything that he says goes. He's the one that manages everything. The Amarkel is Kaidem LeGizbar. This Amarkel comes before the Gizbar, which is one of the caretakers that's not in charge of everything, but in charge of all the possessions of Hektish and the treasure, basically the treasurer. And the Gizbar is Kaidem LeReish Mishmar. The Gizbar comes before the Reish of a Mishmar, which is the group that serves for one entire week. It was divided into 24 Mishmaris. And Reish Mishmar is Kaidem LeReish Beisav. He comes before the Reish Beisav, which is the head of the family that's serving that day of the week. And Reish Beisav is Kaidem LeKayin Hedyet. The Reish Beisav comes before just a plain Kayin Hedyet. Iboilu, the Shaila was asked, Le'inyan Tumeh, if it's a case of Tumeh, which means that there is a case where a Kayin is allowed to be Mitama himself when it's a Meis Mitzvah. No one else is going to bury him. Sagan u'Meshuach Muhammad. You have a choice who should bury him, either the Deputy Kayin Gadol or the one anointed for war. Eizamem Kaidem. Who should go to this first and do it? I'll bring you a raya. It clearly says in the Braisa, the Tanya is Gan Meshuach Muhammad Shoy Mahalcham Baderech. So this Gan and the Meshuach, they were both going on the way. Upaga ben Meis Mitzvah, and they encountered the Meis Mitzvah. Mutiv sheyitame Meshuach Muhammad. It's better that the Meshuach Muhammad should be mitame himself. Al yatam is Gan, but this Gan should not be mitame. Shem yera by psul b'kohen gadol, because this Gan always has to be available to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. If the kohen gadol has some kind of thing that is going to make him possible to serve, nichnas as Gan Mishamish Tachtov. This Gan has to be available to serve in his place. Frag the Gemara, but Vatanya and Abraisa, we learned before, Meshuach Muhammad Kaidam was Gan, that the Meshuach Muhammad is first. He's before this Gan. There it's talking about whose life do you have to say first. And in that it says that Meshuach Muhammad is first. Okay, continuing on this same subject, who comes first? Sagt the Gemara, or sagt the Heilige Mishnah, that is, Kayin, Kaidim, LeLevi, the Kayin comes before the Levi. And Levi Yisrael. The Levi then comes before any Yisrael. Yisrael comes before Lamamzer, before one that's born from a non-kosher relationship where there's a chi of kares and the child's a mamzer. Or mamzer lenasin. The mamzer comes before the nasin, which came from the gevainim that were megayer and it's not they're not supposed to marry into Klal Yisrael. The nasin leger. The nasin comes before the ger, and the ger le'eved meshuchrer. And the ger again?
What kind of a ger?
A regular good ger.
The nasin comes before a ger.
Yeah, the Gemara will explain why. The Gemara will explain why the nasin comes before the ger, and the ger le'eved meshuchra. The ger comes before an eved that was freed. He's also a ger, but still the ger comes first. Amosai. Now this entire list here, where the kain is all the way at the top. When is this the case? Bisman shakulam shavim. If they're all on the same level in their learning and understanding Torah. But if we have this mamzer, an illegitimate child, and he is a Talmud Chacham, but the Kohen Gadol, but the Kohen Gadol is an ignoramus, mamzer Talmud Chacham, Kohen Gadol Amoretz. You saved the life of the mamzer, that's the Talmud Chacham, before the Kohen Gadol, even if he's a Kohen Gadol, but he's a Amoretz.
How could Kohen Gadol be an Amoretz at the same level?
In the times of the second Beis Hamikdash, the Kohenim Gedalim paid their way into being a Kohen Gadol. No, they paid their way into it, so it's possible. Talk to Gemara, Kohen Kohen Levi. From where do we see that the Kohen comes before the Levi? Shana, the pasuk says, Bnei Amram, the sons of Amram are Aaron and Moshe. Vayavdel Aaron like Disha Kodesh Kadashim. So he had two sons, Aaron and Moshe, and Aaron was separated, and he's Kodesh Kadashim. So we see he's higher than Moshe, which is a Levi. Levi Kohen Yisrael. The Levi comes before the Yisrael. Shana, the pasuk says, Be'esahi Hivdel Hashem es Shevet HaLevi. From amongst all the Yid. Yisrael Kohen LaMamzer, the Yid comes before a Mamzer, so that's not a pasuk, but it's a svarish. Zeh meyuchas, because Yid has proper yichus, v'zeh meyuchas, and he does not have proper yichus. Mamzer Kohen LaNasin, the Mamzer comes before the Nasin, because zeh ba mitipak sheira. The Mamzer comes from a father and a mother that are both properly Jewish, even though they did not have a proper relationship, but he comes from a tipak sheira, v'zeh ba mitipak psula, and he comes from the Gevainim. It was the nation of Gevainim in Eretz Yisrael that converted this Nasin, correct? And he's not. They're not supposed to marry into Klal Yisrael. Nasin kaidem leger. The nasin comes before the ger to save him. Why is that? Because zeh gadal imanu b'kedusha. The nasin was raised amongst Yidden in holiness, and v'zeh lo gadal imanu b'kedusha. But the ger was not raised amongst Yidden in holiness. Ger kaidem le'eved meshuchre. The ger comes before the eved that was freed, because zeh haya b'chlal order. This eved Kanani that was once freed has a curse that was once on him. By the pasuk where it speaks about Chum that cursed his son Canaan, he cursed him to be a slave. That means a slave has a curse on him. So this Eved Meshuchra had a curse on him. But then a regular ger did not have this curse on him, so therefore the ger is on a higher level. And the Mishnah said, this is when they're all on the same level. But if the Mamz is a Talmud Chacham, he comes even before the Kohen Gadol, which is an Amoretz. You know, immediately from where do we know this? Because the pasuk says, Yikara hi mipninim. This refers to the Torah that it's more precious than gems, than pearls. This means Kohen Gadol shenichnas lefnai v'lefnim. One that learns Torah, he's on a higher level. He's more precious than the one that goes into Pninim, which means in the inner chamber into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Tanya Rav Shimon ben Yochai said, "Bedino sheyaktem eved meshuchrer leger." Really, the eved that was freed should be before the ger. And why is that? Because shezeh gadol imana b'kedusha. The eved that was freed, he was eved Kanani in the house of a yid, and he was raised in holiness. And v'zeh loy gadol imana b'kedusha. But the ger that converted now, he grew up amongst Goyim, and he was not raised in holiness. So why does the Eved Meshucher come first? The answer is, like we said before, Elazeh Hoya B'chlal Order. The Eved was once in a status of being cursed, Hoya B'chlal Order, whereas the Ger was not ever in that status of being cursed. Shalu Talmidav Es Rabbi Elazar Berab Tzadik. The students asked Rabbi Elazar Berab Tzadik, why do we see that everyone is chasing to marry a Giyatis? And people are not chasing to marry a woman that was a maid servant and she was freed. She's also now a full Jew. So what's the difference between them? The reason is because the Eved or the Amma Mishuchreres, she was once in a place that she was cursed. Where a Giyatis did not have that curse on her. Another reason, this one, which is the one that the Giyatis was in a presumption of being protected, we know that defiled her. But the Amma that was a Cananis and now she's, or a Shifcha Cananis and now she's freed, she was not protected, so we don't know who had a relation with her. The student asks Rabbi Elazar, why does a dog know and follow his master? But a cat does not know and follow his master in the same way. So he answered that because we'll see soon the Gemara will bring in a brayse. It says someone that eats from food that a mouse ate from it, it causes him to forget the Torah that he learns. So an entity, which is the cat, that eats mice itself, definitely it causes this cat to forget his master. So the Talmidim asked another question to Rabbi Elazar. Why is everybody running after and killing the mice? What did the mice do wrong that they're always being chased? The answer is because they have a bad Yetzer Hara. Where do you see this Maihi? Rav Amar afila glimi gaitzi. Even garments they bite into, even though it's not food, they can't eat from it, but they still go and bite into it. So we see they have the bad Yetzer. Rav Papa says afila shufta mara gaitzi. The handle of a hoe or of a shovel, they'll bite into it. So here the Gemara brings the source of this regarding eating from food that a mouse ate from it. So Tana Rabbanim learned in the Brayse Chamisha Dvarim Mishakchim Esalimo. There are 5 things that causes a person to forget the Torah he learned. Body eats from the same place where a mouse eats, and from where a cat ate. A person eats the heart of an animal, and someone that is accustomed to eating olives. Okay, so this is a custom, only that eats olives. A person that drinks water that are remains from someone that washed himself with it. And he washes his 2 feet, one on the other. Others say, also one that he puts his clothing under his head like a pillow. And there's different questions on all these cases that it says here, because some of them we find that are allowed in different cases. For example, the last one it says here about putting your clothing under the person's head, it says it shouldn't be directly under the person's head, but if there's something in between, it's allowed.
And for the olives, if you put olive oil.
Put olive oil, correct. Exactly. Here, let's see. Chamisha Dvarim, there are 5 things, Meshivim Esalimod. They will bring back for a person to remember what he learned. Pas Pechomen, eating bread that was baked directly on coals, or roasted on the coals. V'kol shekei Pechomen atzmam. Definitely if you eat the coals itself. Not exactly sure how that's possible. Okay, but v'hoichel beitzim u'gugelis, a person that eats an egg that's partially roasted. B'loi melach, but without salt. V'haragol b'shem and zayis, and someone that's accustomed to drinking olive oil, that brings back his Torah. V'haragol b'yayin u'b'samim, and someone that's accustomed to drinking wine and fragrant spices to smell. V'hashoyse mayim shel shiyure isa, and he drinks from water that's leftovers from a dough. And the Yashim and the mothers add and say, a person that dips his finger into salt and eats this as well. Haragol b'shem zayis, someone that's accustomed to drinking olive oil, so it said here that it'll bring back his learning, says the Gemara, this proves what Rabbi Yechanan said, when one eats the olives itself, this will cause him to forget his learning of 70 years. So similar also when it comes to the olive oil, Meishav Limud Shel Shivim Shana. It brings back his learning for 70 years.
What's the difference with the first and the last part?
It's just proving, it's bringing a proof to what Rabbi Yochanan said, and it's adding here that it's for 70 years, a learning of 70 years. I think the Rebbe in one place in the Deshima spoke about this, or wrote about this, that the olives itself are bitter, and that's something negative which causes us to forget. And the oil, the olive oil, that it says, you bring out the oil, which is a very high level of chachma. It's connected to a very great thing that brings back the memory. A person that's accustomed to drinking wine and besamim. This point proves what Rava said. Rava said, wine and the fragrant spices, pakchen, they made me wise. That's by Memelech. The Brisa says one that dips his finger in salt and eats the salt. So the Gemara Reish Lakish says uba'achas. That's only if he's eating with one finger. But the Gemara says not necessarily. Ketanoi it's a machlokes. Rabbi Yehuda says achas only with one finger, v'lo ishtayim, but not if he's dipping two fingers into the salt. Rabbi Yossi mishtayim v'lo shalosh, only if he's dipping two fingers into the salt, and not if he's dipping three fingers into the salt. Now v'simanech, a siman to remember what this machlokes is about is kemitza, the kemitza finger, which is the ring finger. And what the point that Gemara is saying here is, I'll demonstrate it on the video as well, that the kemitza finger is the ring finger, right? So we're looking for a siman to remember this machlokes. You have one finger on one side and two fingers on the other side. So therefore the machlokes here is whether it's one finger or two, and not one or three or four, but it's this ring finger that reminds you that the machlokes is either one or two on the other side of the ring finger. Okay, that's the siman for this. Asarat Dvarim, the Brisa says there are 10 things, kashim lelimud, that are difficult for a person that's learning. However, tachas afser ha'gamol, or the person that goes under the afser, the bit that you hold it, the rope of the camel. V'kol shkein tachas gamol atzmai, definitely if he goes under the camel itself. However, ben shnei gemalim, one that goes between two camels. However, ben shtei noshim, and one that walks between two women. V'ha'isha ha'iveres ben shnei anoshim, or a woman that goes between two men. V'ha'over mitachas re'ach rash on the vela, and one that is walking under a place where there is a bad aroma from a dead carcass. V'ha'over tachas hagesher, and one that goes under a bridge shloi ovru tachtav mayim mem yoim, where there was no water flowing under this bridge for 40 days. V'ha'ochel pas shloi bishul kol tzarka, and one that eats bread that was not baked properly. V'asheise me'amas hamayim ha'iveres beveis hakvaris, and one that drinks from a stream of water. Oh, sorry, I skipped the line. V'aichel basar, and one that eats meat mizuama listerin, and he's eating it out of this the spoon that's used to remove the foam or the film that's on top of the grease that's on top of the pot. V'asheise me'amas hamayim ha'iveres beveis hakvaris, and someone that drinks from the stream of water that flows in the beis hakvaris. And one that looks in the face of one that's dead. It says, so some say it says here specifically mistakel, means to look closely and intently. That is ksav shal gabi kever, one that reads the matzeva. So it says, I think it says b'shem da'arizal, that it's only if it's the letters are protruding, but not if it's indented. The way we are medayik to make the letters, that it should not be protruding. Tana Rabbanan in the Brisa we learned Kishahanasi nichnas, when the king or the leader enters into the Besmedrish, all the people have to stand up, and they don't sit back down until he tells them you can sit. Kisha'av Bezdin nichnas, when the leader of the Bezdin enters, so not everyone has to get up, but one row on one side and another row on the other side where the pathway that he's walking through will get up, and they remain standing until he sits down on his place. When a wise man enters, so then echad oimed ve'echad yoshev. So only one stands, meaning the place where he's walking in. The person that's sitting right there gets up for him, and as he continues walking, that person can sit down now, and now the next person that he's standing near gets up, until he goes and sits down on his place. Bnei Chachamim v'Talmidei Chachamim, the sons of those Chachamim or Talmidei Chachamim, Bisman Sharabim Tzrichim Lehem, in a case where they are needed by the Rabbim to be there to serve their father. So then Mafsiin al Rosh Ha'am, if they have to leave in the middle of the Bismedrish, and in those times, how did they sit? They sat on the floor. So they are allowed to leave. Mafsiyan al Rashi Ha'am, so when they walk out, it looks like they're working on everyone's heads. They're allowed to walk out and Yatza. And if they have to leave, L'tzayrich, for a need that they have, Yikonis, they come back in. They're allowed to come back in, V'yeshev b'mekayim, to sit in their place. The sons of the Talmidei Chachamim, their father is appointed to be a leader over the people. If they are able to sit there and to listen to what their fathers are saying and they understand, they enter, they sit there in front of their fathers, their backs are facing the people because they're sitting and listening to what their father is teaching. However, if they cannot understand what their father is saying anyways, so then, they come and they sit near their father to serve him, to be with him. But they cannot allow their backs to be to the people. They have to be facing all the people. Rav Lazar Rav Tzaddik says, by a place, and you come to a chasana, and you have a chashuv person that's sitting there, so they also made another small bench for their sons to sit with them, to be there to serve them. Okay, so now the Tana in this brayso said, Yotzel Tzayich, he went out, he had to relieve himself. Nichnas, he can enter back in, v'yeshev b'mekaymai, and sit on his place. Rav Papa explained, what was the reason why he had to leave only for Ktanim, to go out and urinate? But if it's for Gedolim, then we don't allow them to come back in, because then it's already their fault. Because they should have made sure that this should not happen. They should take care of it in advance. A person should always make it a habit to relieve himself early in the morning and late in the evening. So if it's during the day, he shouldn't have to go out too far to be in a place that's tznius. However, about this, Rava said, or this is not greatest. That's Rava. The Gemara just continues and says, "Ha'idna the chol sha'alma." Now that people are much weaker and their system does not work exactly so consistently, I feel like gedolim nami. Even if they have to leave for gedolim, they can leave and come back. It's not their fault. So he said, that the children of Talmud Chacham, they make him a bench where he could sit together with his father. That's when their father's alive, in front of their father, to be there with their father. Rabbi Yechanan said, Bimei Rab Shimon Gamliel Nishnis Mishnazu. This Mishnah that said here, the different levels of how much you have to get up. For the Nasi, everybody gets up. For the Av Bezdin, only the 2 rows get up. And then for the Chacham, only the one person that's standing near him gets up. It's in the times of Rab Shimon Gamliel that this was taught. And here the Gemara brings the story that brought about this halacha. Rab Shimon Gamliel, Nasi, Rab Shimon Gamliel, he was the leader. Rab Meir, Chacham. Rab Meir was wise. And Rab Nassin was Av Bezdin. It puts Rab Meir first, even though he was only a Chacham, but apparently Rab Meir was on a higher level than him. But Rab Meir was a Ben Gadim, so he did not become appointed to be the Av Bezdin. Rab Nassin came from David HaMelech, so he was appointed to be the Av Bezdin. Now what happened? Ki hava Rab Shimon Gamliel Hassam, when Rab Shimon Gamliel was there, hava kaima kula alma mikamei. Everybody would get up for him. Ki hava aili Rab Meir Rab Nassin, when Rab Meir came in, when Rab Nassin came in, everybody got up for them as well. Oh, but Rab Shimon Gamliel, so Rab Shimon Gamliel says, shouldn't there be some difference that you should notice a difference between me and them? I'm the Nasi, and the Nasi has to be always on a higher level. So takin ha masnita. That's when he instituted what we learned here, that by the Av Bezdin and by the Chacham, not everybody has to get up. What happened? That day when Rab Shimon Gamliel instituted this, Rab Meir and Rab Nassim were not present. So Lamachar the next day, Ki asu, they came. They see that not everybody's getting up for them, as was the habit until that point. Amri, so they said, my hi, what happened here that not everyone's getting up? Amru lahu, so they told him, Hachi tikkun Rab Shimon Gamliel. This is what Rab Shimon Gamliel instituted yesterday. Amalei Rab Meir, Rab Nassin, so now Rab Meir tells Rab Nassin, and they conspired there and they said, we have to do what's right. And they said, no Chacham, look, I am the Chacham, Va'at Av Bezdin, you are the Av Bezdin, so Niskin Milse, Kilidi done. Let us institute something that will be proper for our benefit, for what's right, the way we see it to be right. So my Navid, what are we going to do? My Navid later is, what are we going to do to Rab Shimon Gamliel? So tomorrow when he comes, name Elei, we're going to tell him, Gali Oiktzin. teach us Mesechta Uktzim. The Leslie, we know that he doesn't know this, he's not able to teach it. And then Vikivin Dele Gomar, he won't be able to teach it. So then name Malay, we're going to tell him. The Pasuk says, Mi Yimal Gvuras Hashem, who speaks the greatness of Hashem, Yashmiya Kol Tilasa. He's able to teach anything of Tilasa of Hashem's praise, which means here, Lemi No Lamal Gvuras Hashem, Mishiyachal Hashmiya Kol Tilasa. Only one that's able to teach all the praises, everything in Torah. And if he can't teach Uksim, what's going to happen is, Nabrei, we're going to remove him. V'have ano av bezin, then I'll become the av bezin, and v'at nasi, and you will become the nasi. Okay, some say the opposite order, but that was their plan. They're going to remove Rav Shimon Gamliel from his position.
Which one will be the av bezin?
Yeah, so as I said, there's two gerses over here. So Shaminu Rav Yaakov ben Karshi overheard what they were planning. So Amar, he said, Dilma chas v'shalim, asya milsa l'dei kisufa. Maybe, God forbid, this can cause that Rav Shimon Gamliel will be embarrassed. Okay, so Mefarshim point out that really Rab Nosson and Rab Meir were doing this L'Shem Shemayim. They felt that they actually were on a higher level than Rab Shimon Gamliel, Aliba de Emes, and they were supposed to be the ones that are the leader and not him. Adarab, the question is why they waited until now to remove him. If they knew he didn't know Masechta Uktzin, they should have made that point to him even earlier. Either way, so Rab Yaakov ben Karshi was afraid that it still may bring an embarrassment to Rab Shimon Gamliel. So also Yosef Achayre said that Rav Shimon Gamliel, he went and he sat in the back of the second floor where Rav Shimon Gamliel was living, and Pashat, he started explaining Goras V'tone, he's reading and learning again loud. So Rav Shimon Gamliel should hear that somebody is learning Mesechta Uktzin outside of his window. So Amar Rav Shimon Gamliel said to himself, Ma'ide Kama, what's going on over here? He said that I'm hearing him reading Mesechta Uktzin suddenly over here outside my window. Maybe there's something that's being planned in the Beis Medrash against me. So midi, something. So Yoav Daite, he took this to heart, and the Garsan, he learned Mesechta Uktzin properly. The next day, Amru Leis, Rab Meir, Rab Nosson said to him, Naisi Ma'av and Naisi Uktzin. The master should come and teach us Uktzin. Pasach v'Omar. So he was ready, and he taught them Mesechta Uktzin. So after he was finished and he taught them, he said to them, if had I not been prepared and I wouldn't know how to teach, you would have embarrassed me. So this is not the right thing. So Pakid, Rav Shimon Gamliel commanded, and they expelled Rav Meir and Rav Nosson from the Beis Medrash. Now, they were outside the Beis Medrash, and they would write their questions on notes, Vishadu Hasam, and they would throw that questions into the Beis Medrash. To have a mifrak. So whatever was able to be answered was answered. Do lo have a mifrak, whatever they couldn't answer inside. So Kosvi Piruki Vishadi. The Rab Meir, Rab Nosson that were outside had to write their answers on notes and throw them into the Beis Medrash. So Amalu Rabbi Yosi said about this, Taira mi bachutz. Rab Meir, Rab Nosson, the source of Taira, they are outside. V'anu mi b'fnim, and we are on the inside. Amalei Rab Shimon Gamliel. So Rab Shimon Gamliel says, Nailinu, we're going to bring them back in, but mio niknesinu, we're going to give them a penalty. And that is the lineimra mishmaita mishmayu, that we're not going to say a statement of theirs using their name. So what happened? Asikal Rab Meir Acherim. That's when Rab Meir got the title of Acherim, which is many times quoted like this in the Gemara. Well, Rab Nosson Yesh Emrim, and Rab Nosson got the title of Yesh Emrim. Achvuluhu b'chalmayu. They were both shown in a dream. Zilu paisu Rab Shimon Gamliel. Go and appease Rab Shimon Gamliel for what you conspired against him. Rab Nosson Azal. Rab Nosson did go and he appeased him, and Rab Meir Le'azal. Rab Meir did not go. Amar, he said, Divrei chaloimis. What I see in a dream is not nothing to pay attention to. When Rab Nosson came, Rab Shimon Gamliel said to him, what were you planning on doing? Yes, the prestigious belt of your father that was in a high position is beneficial to you as well, that you should be appointed to a high position as well. Okay, so Av Bezdin Shavinach. Because of this, you already became the leader of the Bezdin. So Nami, so Lamavi Av Bezdin, that is. So you were already appointed to be a Av Bezdin. Shavinach Nami Nasi. You want to be appointed also to be a leader, the Nasi. So why were you trying to demote me from being the Nasi and taking me over? That was the tiny that he had to him. Okay, we'll stop here. The continuation, the Siyam, we'll make him Mitzvah Shem.